Hello and welcome to another episode of the Modern Voice Podcast. I'm your host, Billie Tarascio, joined today by Madison Wellborne McGee of the Alienation Project. This is a topic that people simply cannot get enough of. It's complex, it's multifaceted, and Madison brings a unique perspective and a unique story that is absolutely worth sharing and hearing. Madison, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you for being here. Madison, tell us a little bit about your story and the Anti-Alienation Project.
Sure. So my story is unfortunately a common one. Although most people are not aware of this form of child psychological abuse. And I want to start the interview by saying that parental alienation is a severe form of child psychological abuse. So my parents' marriage, where do you even start? I was about 7 or 8 when my parents' marriage really started to become terrible. They put me in the middle of their marriage. And my mom, from the time my parents got divorced, especially, made me believe lies, false accusations. And she went on an obsessive rampage, pretty much, to get me to reject my dad. And before there had been issues in their marriage, my dad and I had always had a very close, naturally loving, fun relationship. I considered him my best friend. I mean, he even came up with a daddy and daughters club, adventure club for us, and he was in charge of the whole club. Like he was a really hands-on involved dad. So to lose him in my 9-year-old little brain, I really did mourn him as if he died. My
Mm.
mom made a whole bunch of different false accusations involving family court, but also she made me believe terrible things about him, that he's selfish, abusive, that he doesn't love me, that he loves my brothers more than me, all these really negative things. And for the next 20 years, I rejected my dad without true justification. So I have 4 younger brothers. I'm the oldest of 5 children, and my 4 younger brothers were never alienated. They've always had what they would tell you to be close relationships with both of my parents. But I was the only child targeted in my family. I don't know if it's because I'm a girl or if it's because I'm the oldest. Either way, that's how it ended up for me. And so I went on to, try to cope as best as I could. And I figured out the truth 2 years ago now, a little over 2 years ago now. And I've been on this journey to rebuild my relationship with my dad and to speak out about this really severe form of child psychological abuse, because I noticed that not many people have been speaking out about it from the child's point of view. But when it comes to parental alienation, for the parents, it's he said, she said. So people aren't sure what to believe. So since the start, I've noticed, wow, like more children who've been through this really need to speak out, because we don't have a stake in the game. We don't have, custody or money to lose or assets to lose. We're just trying to change things for the next generations of children who are still suffering. And I've also been forming this coalition of adult children of parental alienation. And we formed this amazing group. I've actually gotten to meet everybody on our team. There's 7 of us now, ladies, in person in Colorado with a parental alienation expert, and we put on a panel discussion. Anyway, my life has just been crazy in the past 2 years, but it's been in the best way possible. I've been able to really take my life back and actually be able to heal. It's so frustrating as an alienated kid. You usually have a bunch of different effects that play out in your life, usually really self-destructive effects, anxiety, depression. Some people develop a drug or alcohol addictions. Some people have issues in school, almost across the board, really low self-esteem and self-worth, just a lot of negative beliefs about yourself, about your other parent, and about the world. It's very damaging. And, the whole time I just wanted to get better. I just wanted to be happier. I didn't understand like why I was having all these issues, even
Mm.
health issues you develop from having the chronic state of fight or flight. So learning the truth truly is the key for alienated children to be able to heal, reclaim their lives, and experience unconditional love, because more often than not, the true targeted parent really does unconditionally love their child.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. If we just go back to the 9-year-old you,
Yeah.
um, after your parents' divorce, were they both local?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the unique thing is I've always lived about 15 or 20 minutes from my dad
Okay.
until I went to college or
Okay.
boarding school. Yeah.
And what was the parenting time arrangement?
So my dad had every other weekend and Wednesday nights.
Okay. And did your brothers go and you did not? Or how did that all work? And from your perspective, like
Yeah.
what happened?
Yeah. So that's exactly what happened. My brothers went all the time and I refused to go. My mom made me believe it was my own decision. And she even would walk me through the steps, the thought process. Like, for example, she would say, "Oh, your dad is claiming that I'm manipulating you as a 9-year-old." And
Right.
I would have to say, "No, mom, what are you talking about? Like, I don't want to go, dad. It's my own decision." So that when if my dad ever questioned anything, or if anyone in the family ever questioned anything, I would already have that train of thought implanted. Oh, no, no, remember? Like, no, it's all my decision. So yeah, I have refused to go with my dad completely. And in my
Beginning
little
at age 9.
9,
So
straight from, yeah.
somehow between the time that your parents' marriage was intact to the time that they got divorced,
Mhm.
you had completely changed your opinion about your dad.
Yeah, I did.
How
And
did that happen?
that's a great question. It wasn't boy, it happened slowly. And then there was one big event at the end that I would say put the nail in the coffin. And I have a video about this on my YouTube channel. But um, so it started very slowly. As I mentioned, my parents, they kind of both put me in the middle. They were both a little bit at fault. They separated the house and used me to communicate with each other.
Mm,
So they were already putting me in the middle, which kind of naturally allowed for my mom to start to use me as a therapist and rely on me for emotional support, rely on me to watch my 4 younger brothers, rely on me for everything. And I was a child, but in my 9-year-old head, I saw her crying and upset and very, very depressed. And that was scary. And I didn't see my dad crying. If anything, I just saw them fighting and saw my dad walk away to try to collect himself. But what ended up happening, the big event, which I have a whole video on this, I didn't even know what a silver bullet tactic was until I think it was last year or this year, whenever I made that video. I found out what a silver bullet tactic is. And that's what my mom did to my dad. So my parents had a 12-year-long marriage. There was never a call to CPS. There was never a domestic violence allegation. Um, my mom and my dad didn't tell me any of this, by the way. I've had to go to so many other sources, mostly family members, friends, I mean, documents to figure the truth out because my dad will not talk bad about my mom, which is the ironic part. But
mm,
in the end, what I learned is that my mom had talked to a divorce attorney who advised her, this is what happened. She advised her to, I don't know if it was to set up a situation of domestic violence or spur, to aggravate my dad into making it seem like a situation of domestic violence. And that's what happened. She pulled it off. And this is because she wanted to get full custody or majority custody and child support, a lot of it. And that's what happened. And then she also filed a restraining order on the idea that she felt threatened, which apparently you could do not 20 years ago in North Carolina. Just say that you felt threatened and you could file a PFO. And then my dad wasn't able to see us for a few weeks. So what happened, from my point of view, is that I was at a friend's house when all this happened. This is the strangest part, Billy, because I was at a friend's house and all my 4 brothers were at the house when
mm,
this domestic violence incident happened.
mhm.
but I wasn't. I was the only one not there. So I'm driving home with my grandma, driving up to the house, and I see 6 or 7 cop cars. You know, my dad's with a bunch of cops. My mom's on the other side of the driveway with a bunch of cops. My grandma's my mom's mom, going hysterical in the car. She didn't let me get out of the car. She turned the car around and drove back to her house. That's the extent of what I witnessed myself. But later that night, I was told the event of what happened by my mom and my grandma, which was a horror story. And ironically enough, my 4 younger brothers who were there during the whole event never developed fear of my dad, never developed an alienation case. In fact, my dad has since told me certain things, but and my other family members have told me that when the cops were there that day, my brothers were all, you know, huddled around my dad, like for comfort, like, Daddy, you know, everything's gonna be okay, right? Like, and my dad was comforting them, and my mom was with the cops. Like, my brothers went to my dad for comfort that day, and he did say, in that moment, he was able to calm my brothers down. He was able to tell them, I might not be able to see you for a few weeks, but I will see you soon. Don't worry. This is just temporary. And he told me I was never able to have that moment with you. And so I was told at events, and from that point on, I believe my dad was an abuser. I believe that by not going with him, I was standing up to injustice. And on the flip side, if I did go with him, that would be giving the stamp of approval that it's okay to abuse my mom, that it's okay to do all of these things.
It's the ultimate loyalty bind, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I guess in some ways, I think the silver bullet tactic that she pulled off worked for her. I think that she got what she maybe wanted, but at what cost? Because I lost 20 years with my dad, and now I don't have a relationship with my mom. And it's like, none of this needed to happen.
None of it needed to happen.
No.
Children can manage divorce. They can.
Thank you. Yes. I really want to make that point. People that might get divorced, your children can definitely manage divorce. The divorce, I would have been A-okay. Like, maybe I would have had a tick on my ACEs score, but I would have been okay.
Right.
It was my mom's obsessive need for my dad and for me to not be able to have a close relationship with my dad thereafter that destroyed a lot of my life.
Well, and I'm feeling from you just so much guilt and pain and shame. And that was placed on you, and it never, ever should have been.
No.
So, how did you end up at a place where you now don't have a relationship with your mom and you do have a relationship with your dad?
Well, it didn't take very long for me to learn the term parental alienation and to hear from another former alienated child, Ryan Thomas, straight out of his mouth what it is like being an alienated child. All it took was that, 16, I think, minute long video for me to know, all right, this is why my life has never made sense. This is what I have been through. This is it. I mean, most of the people I've talked to who've been through this have that light bulb moment. It's not something you really have to convince yourself of. It's kind of like having a major depression screening. When you have major depression, like, you kind of know what's going on
Right.
when you're screening. So I knew that's what had happened to me. And like many other friends of mine that I've met, you know, this is hard to talk about because I don't want to put my mom in a negative light. However, the situation naturally does. So I realized the truth, it's every emotion you can experience, I think. And I've never felt so emotional because right off the bat, you have the confusion, you have anger, you have guilt, extreme guilt and shame. And then you have, at least I did, a little bit of hope for my dad. My dad could love me? Like, what? But that came a little later. It was mostly just confusion, doubt, a lot of fear, anger, guilt, shame, um, no accountability taken on the part of my mom, and, you know, no apology, no accountability.
So when you came across this video and you realized I've been alienated,
Yeah.
did you go to your mom with that information?
Not, not in that way.
Mhm.
Okay, so, this is something I actually haven't really spoken about publicly, but I, at that point, felt unsafe around my mom. And
For other
I've
reasons or
uh,
for this reason?
both.
Okay.
Um, a lot of parents do alienate their child because then they don't have the protection of their other parents, so they can do other types of abuse as well. So a lot of alienated kids that go through more than just this abuse. But I did not feel safe. So I actually had my husband in the room when I called her on speakerphone because there would be a lot of times where we would talk and she would convince me she had never said something. And I
Mhm.
would eventually gaslight myself into believing she had never said it in the first place. That's
Mhm.
how much I was in the
Mhm.
fog. So, yeah, my husband was in the room. We recorded the call and yeah, it was bizarre. It was just bizarre.
So she did not take any accountability.
No.
She basically said that none of it was true. Did she stick by her story that dad was abusive and she was protecting you?
It got so bizarre. It was like she was talking about a different child on a different planet in a different lifetime, honestly. It was very crazy. She did say it was all my decision.
Mm. So she said I was just supporting you.
Yeah.
How did how has this impacted your relationship with your brothers?
That's also hard to talk about because um, when I stopped talking to my mom, my brother I was closest with stopped talking to me. So my mom has alienated me from my brothers, some of them, now from across the country. She will never stop alienating people. And it's confusing for me. There was 20 years where every Wednesday night and every other weekend, my brothers gave me a hard time for not going with my dad. And then when I did go with my dad every so often, my brothers would be happy. But now that I've realized the truth of everything, and I'm close with my dad, and we talk almost every day, and they're not happy for me with my relationship with my dad, but they're unhappy that I'm not talking to my mom.
So
So
your
alienation,
brothers got to experience a healthy relationship with both parents.
yeah, I was talking to one of my brothers the other, actually it was a few months ago, and explaining that I was made to believe that I don't, wasn't, that dad doesn't love me. Like, mom always, I mean, I have these things that were told to me again and again and again, and I always fall back on those. Like, I love to write. I've always wanted to write books for a living, and my mom knew that, and she was trying to weaponize that from the time I was 9. She always said that I was going to write a best-selling book called The Hole in My Heart about why my dad doesn't love me. And so it's things like that that I can think, what kind of mother would tell their child that? I have
That's
kids.
horrible.
Right. I have two daughters. And every time she would tell me that, by the way, I would feel very uncomfortable,
Right.
but I didn't know why.
Why? How could you, right?
Yeah. Um, so the effect on the sibling relationships is something that's not talked about enough because you lose when you're an alienated kid, you lose as a child in your head. It's like you're mourning your parent. You lose one parent. And then that later down the line, you learn that, oh my God, I was played. It was a long con. I was played. My parent played me. And then, while you might get your targeted parent back if hopefully they're still alive and willing to reconnect with you, your parent who's done this to you, a lot of times they actually reject the child when the child learns the truth because it's like they know they've been found out. They don't want you to reconnect with the other parent, so they reject you too. And that's kind of how it happened as well. But then you also lose the parent you thought you had. You lose what you thought you were going to have the rest of your life, what you thought it would look like having your kids be with cousins at grandma and grandpa's every summer and everything. And it's a mourning process that has been very, very, very painful, very painful.
Hey there, co-parents. It's Billie Tarascio with Modern Law, and let me tell you about our Family Wizard, our preferred co-parenting app. It's a game changer. I use it myself. With features like documented calls, secured messaging, shared calendars, and more, our Family Wizard makes co-parenting smoother than ever. Trust me, I've seen the difference that it can make. Join the over 1 million parents and family law professionals who trust our Family Wizard to make co-parenting easier. Ready to take some stress out of co-parenting? Head to ourfamilywizard.com/modern law. Your mom's perspective is she cannot understand your perspective.
I have told her in every way possible what I need to change, what is not okay with me, why I'm hurt, how I'm hurt. No.
She just refuses to acknowledge your perspective. She doesn't even have to necessarily agree with everything. She could have said, I was doing the best I could. I really thought I was respecting your boundaries. I realized where I could have done better. I'm so sorry. Like that would probably help, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that
Like
would
we
be
all do
that
the
would be
best we
amazing.
can at the time, but like take some accountability.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's something that I've had to realize that that's going to have to come from myself.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's okay. That's just what it is. That's how the situation is.
Yeah. So if you cannot get some accountability from your mom, you are okay with the fact that you may never have a relationship with her and your children may never have a relationship with her.
I'm not okay with it. No, it kills me. I even hearing you say that makes, yeah, no, I'm not okay with that. But when someone hurts you again and again and they refuse to stop, what else are you supposed to do?
Right.
Even if it's your parent.
And she still refuses to stop.
Yes. I mean, I feel a little, again, it's hard for me to tell my story without naturally putting her in the negative light. But yeah, at first you mentioned before the interview, some of the more pathological types of alienators. And that's, as far as I'm aware, more of the severe type is a pathological type. And when you have a severe alienator who's pathological level, they are not ever going to stop. Yeah.
Well, they believe their story. They believe their story. They believe when I have met with or represented or had opposing parties who are alienators, they are fully convinced that they are doing what they need to do to protect their children and that they are right.
Oh, yeah.
Even
100%.
when sometimes their cases are blowing up, they're going to lose their children. The family court is going to take their children away, and they cannot change. They're so dug in on this perspective.
Yeah. I know, it's kind of insane. Yeah.
And if it's an all or nothing, I mean, it puts you in a really terrible situation. It's interesting that your brothers were able to either they weren't targeted or they
Mhm.
were able to just kind of tone it out and reject it.
Well, I think that probably a lot of people would not have been able to successfully target just one child.
Yeah. It's a
But
little
I
unusual.
Yeah, usually from what I've heard, they target the oldest child if they do to try to bring in the younger ones.
Hmm.
But
Or it's
I,
one at a time, and in succession, the children fall and begin
it's so
to
sad.
reject. It
So
is so sad, but it's consistent in what I have seen.
So, yeah, there was one time that my stepmom told me and my dad, that my brothers very, very early on came to my dad crying, saying, "We know you're not an adulterer. We know you're not an adulterer." And because that was a lie my mom had tried to spin to us. And after that, my mom never tried again with them because they went to my dad and I didn't.
See.
Yeah. But also, I think it's important to point out that these people are people and not all of them have the same intelligence level. Not
Right.
all of them have the same personalities.
Yeah.
So, in my experience, is very intelligent, highly educated alienator. Um, Probably one of the most dangerous types,
Hmm.
honestly. So, information guarding, very selective on who knows what in the family.
Got it.
And because I wasn't going every Wednesday night and every other weekend, I mean, that was the time where you turn up the heat.
Right. Because you were isolated. What
I was isolated. Yeah.
if you is there anything that you wish your dad would have done differently or could have done differently?
That's a really great question. My dad did an amazing job. He really did. And I don't fault him for anything. None of it was his fault. Um, he actually did a better job than I would have done in his position. I can tell you that much. He he never blamed me because he always knew that it was my mom. And he even during the last probably 6 years where I still had a relationship with my mom, I was never invited on vacations. I was never invited to big family events, but my dad always did. He always did. Even if I hadn't gone the past, dozen things, he still invited me. Um,
So who didn't invite you? Your mom did not invite you?
right. It was my husband who's like, "Hey, Maddie, isn't it weird that the family goes on trips without us?" It was not an easy relationship.
Yeah. So your one of the things your dad did right was he kept inviting you.
Yeah, he
Both
kept
both with
letters, he kept pictures, he kept drawings I made, he kept anything he kept. And those little bits of evidence are
Mhm.
what allowed me to believe him, to believe that he was the dad that I thought he was when I was little.
Did he reach out to you when you were a child?
Well, he always had eyes on me because he was picking up my brothers. They were going to sports. He was living 15 minutes away. So and I wouldn't say that made it necessarily easier or harder. It's just a different type of alienation experience because my dad would like go to my bedroom, knock on the door to try to say hi. He had eyes on me, but that also meant I rejected him that much more to his face. And it's been confusing because it's not like I went 20 years or 40 years without seeing my dad.
Mm-hmm.
We did see each other off and on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's been hard to break that idea of who I thought he was. I
So,
just trained, my body was even trained to have a physical fight or flight response in his presence. So it's taken 2 years to get rid of that.
Really?
2 years
To not be
to,
nervous.
to be able to hug him and not be nervous.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible.
It's amazing. Yeah. To me, it's amazing because this is all I've ever wanted
Yeah.
was for my, yeah, for my dad to love me is like all I've ever wanted. So I am extremely happy and grateful. And my dad is too. He tells me all the time he feels like he has his daughter back.
So one of the things that he did right was he kept physical evidence of his love for you,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and he continued to reach out and make himself available to you even in the face of your rejection over a period of many, many years.
Many years. I mean, this guy's a trooper. Yes. My dad is also, he's also like the most positive person I think I know because this whole trauma of the divorce and the marriage and the alienation is by far the most difficult thing my dad has been through. And he is a glass half full every single day of his life type of guy. And I think that's part of the why he was able to get through it. But I also think another thing that is important for parents out there who might be listening is what I'm especially happy and proud of my dad for doing is he didn't stay down. He got back up and maybe somehow he was able to accept the situation. I don't know how, but he did not stay down. He was still going to build a wonderful life for himself, and he did it. He fell in love again. He met my stepmom, and now she's one of the biggest supports I have. They've been married longer than my parents were married now. And he worked on his career. He has a great career. He has a great business. He loves his life. He has a great life. He continued all of his hobbies. I mean, he was down for a little bit. Yes. He had to live with his parents for over a year in his 30s, but he didn't let the alienation keep him from living his life and from being happy and productive. And I do think that having his 4 other kids still close probably helped a lot too. But if my dad had stayed down in the dumps and God forbid lost his job or had never allowed himself to experience love again or hadn't chosen to put time into his own happiness, his own skills in his life, I would be so sad. Um, so it might feel selfish or it might feel counterintuitive to be focusing on yourself and your own wonderful life. But I think in doing that, my dad has been able to really support me now because he's totally on the other side of this. I mean, he has been for decades, like he's been okay. Um, and now I get to have an awesome stepmom. And I mean, my dad's able to be there for me and be happy. Like he's good. He's
Yeah.
healthy.
Oh, that's such good advice. It's such good perspective. So
Yeah.
tell me about what is the Anti-Alienation Project?
So the Anti-Alienation Project is basically former alienated children saying enough is enough. We want this type of abuse that we've been through, severe child psychological abuse, to be on the public's consciousness, to be on most people's radars, because this is preventable. This does not need to happen, like I said. And alienating behaviors need to be shamed. This is something that I think a lot of people can recognize if you point it out to them, but they don't know what it's called. They don't know how damaging it is for a child. And I don't blame anybody either, because if I hadn't been through this personally, I'm not sure I would fully comprehend just how damaging it is.
Let's
But
talk about that.
okay.
When
Yeah.
a parent tells a child, it's your choice, I will support whatever you want, is that alienating behavior?
Yeah, it's more covert, but yes, that is because you're enabling the child to make their own decision regarding their parents, and whether they have a relationship with either of their parents, and that should not be on the table to discuss with the child.
You are putting your child in a loyalty bind. You are asking them to choose. When you say
Mhm.
it is your choice, you are asking them to choose, and it is not appropriate.
Absolutely not. No, I mean, my mom would always say, "What do you want me to do? I can't make her go."
Right?
Yes, you can. You can make your kids you can make your kids go to school. You can make your kids go to the doctor. Yes, you can make your
Right.
kids go.
And you can encourage it. You can make sure that you don't talk badly about the other parent in front of the child when you do that. And it's very, very hard not to. And everybody slips, and you don't have to be 100% perfect all the time. But if you are a parent who is talking badly about your other parent to your child, even in the name of honesty, you are engaging in alienating behaviors.
Yeah, that's not a controversial statement to me. That's just true. I think that one other thing though is that you can alienate a child without using a single word. There are a lot of tactics don't involve saying anything bad about the other parent at all. I mean, a lot of things can be weaponized, including love, gifts, money, anything can be weaponized, can be taken away or be given to you as a reward. Even the micro expressions give away the parent's true feelings to the child. And when you're that enmeshed with your parent, all it takes is that little micro expression of hate or fear to snap you back in line.
Jeez. Okay, so let's address this specifically so that if people are in it, they can begin to become more self-aware, whether they're children, whether they're parents. Can you describe specifically what are alienating behaviors that don't involve words?
Alienating behaviors that don't involve words. Um, so this is, I mean, the first one that I think of is affection and weaponizing affection. So it could be as simple as, if the child doesn't go with the other parent, you give them affection. Like it could be that simple. You give them
Love
a hug.
bombing.
You Well, that's what my mom did. Every Wednesday night was our special Maddie and mommy time. I got to pick the dinner. We would get takeout. I got to pick the movie from Blockbuster. Like I thought it was
Sure.
fun.
Sure. So
And
you are rewarding your child for rejecting their other parent. That is exactly
yeah,
what that is. And you can see very easily how in her mind she's just trying to make it okay, right? In her mind she's just trying to create special time because the brothers are gone. Like you can see how she could get there.
almost.
Right. If the
Yeah.
consequences to you weren't so big, like you can see how people justify this. And the reason that it's important that we talk specifically is so that if parents are listening and you're in this situation, one of your kids is not going to parenting time, you think it's all about them, you think you're supporting their decision. If you are celebrating that at all, you're engaging in alienating behaviors.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a parent too. And this is what I don't understand. People say there's justifiable alienation. There is no justifiable alienation. Part of the definition of being alienated is that it's without true justification. And what I mean by that is I for instance, my stepsister and my stepbrother, their dad actually is pretty much a loser. Like he has not supported them. He hasn't been there for them. He just hasn't been a present loving dad. I mean, they haven't even seen him that much in their lifetime. But my stepmom, did she ever tell them anything bad about their dad? No. You know what she did instead? She made sure they felt loved. She made sure that they knew it had nothing to do with them or their integrity or their worth. And that's what you do as a parent. Even if you have a co-parent or another a parent that you're working with who is subpar or who, God forbid, actually isn't a good person, you're not gonna tell your child that they don't love them. You're not gonna
Right.
tell your child that they're not wanted. Or you shouldn't anyway. Anyone listening to this, even if you believe that's true, you should not tell your child that because I'll tell you what's going to happen. Your child will internalize that because we are half of our parents, and as children too, our mind is very black and white thinking before a certain age when we're young.
Right.
So it's when you're telling your child that, they're going to internalize that and believe that whatever you're telling them about their parent, they're going to believe that's true about themselves. So the thought I always had was, okay, so if my own dad doesn't love me, like, what good am I? They're going to internalize that. They're going to reject and hate half of that themselves. That is their bad parent. You make them believe doesn't care, doesn't love them, whatever it may be. The damage you're going to do to your child is exponentially greater by telling them any type of truth you believe about the other parent. I will stand by that.
Madison, if there are children listening or adult children who are listening who want to connect with you, want to get more support, how can they find you?
Yeah. So we're on a lot of social media platforms. The Anti-Alienation Project. Got it on my shirt right here. I'm mostly on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. But we also have an email, just all words, the Anti-Alienation Project at gmail.com. We have a support group, and we have an amazing clinical psychotherapist, and she just got her doctorate under Dr. Childress. She runs the free support group via Zoom. We do that every other week. And we also have some other stuff that we do and that we're working on currently behind the scenes. So it's just a great group of people who've all been through this as children. We are very, very careful to only have people who've been through this as children, no targeted parents, no experts, nothing like that. And we vet people. We do phone calls with people. We have a vetting process because we've had alienators try to join. We've had a lot of people try to join. So we want to make sure it's a safe space. It's a very supportive, welcoming, non-judgmental group. And I don't think I would still be doing this if I hadn't met this group, honestly. So yeah, please reach out if you've been through this as a child. It's something that by the end of it, you're left feeling like a shell of yourself and like you're crazy and your world is upside down, and you do not need to go through this alone.
Madison, thank you for sharing your story. You're very, very brave. This was an emotional episode. This was a heavy episode, and it's a heavy topic. And hearing from children who are living this right now is so important for you parents, because you have an opportunity to change course. If things are off, if anything about Madison's story resonated with you when you look at your children, you have the ability right now to change the way you're doing things and go in a different direction. And had that happened, it could have made a difference.
Oh gosh, yes. Yes. I would still have, my life would be totally different if my mom had realized the damage that she was doing and had stopped.
Madison could have a relationship with both of her parents. So I really, really, really suggest, if any of this resonates with you at all, that you take a hard look at what you're telling yourself, at how your children are doing, at how you're behaving. And if you all have liked this episode, please make sure to like it, download it, review it, reach out to Madison. And Madison, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Modern Divorce Podcast. Remember, anything you've heard today or anything you read online is not the replacement for actual consultation with an attorney and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Even if you called in and we spoke to you, you were anonymous and we don't have your details and you have not become a client of Modern Law. However, we would love to speak with you, or you should seek out the advice of legal counsel or counseling or any other expert near you. And if you have an idea for a show topic or you need to speak with an attorney in Arizona, you can reach me at info@mymodernlaw.com.